Ethan and Mark had been hiking canyons their whole lives. They grew up in New Mexico, climbing rocks and camping under the desert skies. They weren't the kind of guys to scare easy. But one weekend, they decided to hike a narrow canyon that locals avoided, a place whispered about in towns, where people claimed strange lights and sounds echoed after dark. Some called it cursed, others wouldn't even speak its name. They laughed it off. By late afternoon, they'd set up camp in a wide bend on the canyon, firelight flickering against the red stone walls. The night settled fast, shadows swallowing the cliffs above. By 9, they roasted marshmallows, drinking cheap beer, swapping ghost stories. Then, they heard it. A scream. High-pitched, ragged, echoing down the canyon walls like it came from 1,000 throats at once. Ethan froze, marshmallow slipping from his stick into the fire. He looked at Mark, who frowned. It's probably just a coyote," Mark said. His voice definitely did lack confidence, though. But they both knew better. Coyotes didn't scream like that. The sound came again, closer this time, a shrill, inhuman wail that ricocheted off the cliffs, bouncing from every direction. It didn't sound like an animal. It sounded human, like someone in agony. Ethan grabbed a flashlight, heart pounding. We should check it out." Mark shook his head, very sharply. "No, you heard what people said about this place." His eyes darted to the dark canyon walls, as though something might be watching. The scream came again, louder, closer. It made Ethan's bones ache. He swore he heard words inside of these hollow screams, syllables forming and breaking apart, like a voice trying to speak through static. Then, silence. They sat in the dark, fire crackling weakly, their breathing the only sound. And then, rocks shifting. Ethan whipped the flashlight towards the canyon walls. The beam caught something, just for a second. A figure, tall, thin, clinging to the rock like a spider, limbs bent in impossible angles. Its head jerked towards them before vanishing into the shadows. The light passed over it, and it was gone. Mark swore under his breath, face pale. We're leaving." He grabbed his pack, stuffing things inside with trembling hands. That's when the scream ripped through the canyon again, this time, right behind them. The fire blew out. Darkness swallowed them whole. Ethan fumbled with his flashlight, his hands slick with sweat. When the beam finally flickered on, Mark was gone. "Mark! Mark! Mark!" Ethan's voice cracked, echoing back at him in 100 warped echoes. "Mark! Mark! Mark!" The canyon answered with laughter. Not Mark's laughter. Not human. A broken, mocking cackle that slithered along the stones, wrapping around him like smoke. Ethan ran, beam bouncing wildly across the canyon floor. His breath came sharp, chest burning, legs threatened to give out. Behind him, footsteps slapping against the stone. Fast, heavy, too close. He turned the light over his shoulder, and his heart stopped. Mark was there, or what looked like Mark. His face pale, stretched, eyes glowing sickly yellow. His jaw hung open too wide, skin tearing at the corners. He was screaming, but no sound came out. Just a hollow, broken gape, his throat moving in a silent howl. The silence was worse than the scream. Ethan stumbled backwards, colliding with the canyon wall. The thing wearing Mark's face twitched forward, its head jerking like something broken, movements too fast, too wrong. It lunged, and the flashlight slipped from Ethan's hands. Darkness. Only the sound of claws scraping stone and that laughter, high sharp, echoing from everywhere at once. By dawn, searchers found Ethan alone at the canyon's edge. His clothes were torn, his skin scraped raw. Blood dried to his face from where he'd clawed himself in panic. He wouldn't speak. He just kept shaking his head, muttering under his breath. When they finally asked him what happened to Mark, he whispered one thing. It wasn't him. It looked like him, but it wasn't. Mark's body was never found. Weeks later, hikers reported hearing screams echoing through that canyon at night. Sometimes it sounded like a man begging for help. Sometimes it sounded like two voices at once, screaming, laughing, and then cutting off into silence.
I live on the coast of Lake Michigan, and one of my favorite hobbies is collecting sea glass. I've been doing it since I was a kid. My mom and I used to walk the beach near our house, and we would pick it up together. I like to go in late fall or early spring when the wind isn't too cold yet and there's nobody else there to take all the good pieces. There's this one park that I go to often. It's tucked between private properties, so not a lot of people know about it. In mid-November, it's completely empty. Normally, I take the paved trail from the parking lot, through the ravine, down to the beach house. But this day, I felt like exploring. I walked along the top of the bluff until I found a small, unmarked trail. I followed it down toward the beach, but there wasn't a good access point that didn't involve climbing, so I kept going. Eventually, it dead-ended. I turned around and then I head back, and that's when I heard it. First, this loud thump on the ground, like something had fallen from a tree. Then, the sound of something charging through the brush right for me. It sounded big, like bear big, but there aren't any bears in my area. Instinct took over, and I made myself look really big, and I shouted, "Hey," in a deep voice. And then the sound stopped just about 20 feet away. I stood there, staring into the trees for a solid 30 seconds before cautiously walking back up the trail. I eventually found a clearing. I climbed down onto the beach, and I kept looking for sea glass. But that whole time, I just couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The beach was empty, and then I noticed something else. I started to hear the sound of footsteps in the gravel behind me, perfectly matching my pace. I told myself it was just, an echo. When I got to the beach house, I decided to see if the bathroom was open. I walked behind the building, and that is when I saw it. Peeking from around the far corner was this human-like figure, about 7 feet tall. It had these deer antlers sprouting from its head, and its skin was so pale it was almost translucent. I felt like I could see the blue veins underneath the surface. I couldn't make out any facial features, if there even was any, just the bone structure of a face without eyes and without a mouth. I ran. Now, I'm not in shape, but I sprinted the entire way up the bluff back to my car. My chest was on fire, my legs felt like lead, but I didn't stop until I was inside and driving away. Later, at a restaurant, I was texting a friend about it, and he told me that I was just stressed about, other things in my life. So stressed that I guess I was just seeing things. And I tried to accept that. But fast forward, months later, I still can't get it out of my mind. If it was real, it wasn't like anything I'd ever seen before.
It was supposed to be a fun, harmless trip. 4 college friends, Aaron, Miguel, Tasha, and Bree, drove out into the desert for a weekend of camping. No cell service, no responsibilities, just beer, guitars, and stars. By their second night, the canyon was theirs alone. The fire crackled, throwing long shadows of the red on the stone walls. They laughed, swapping ghost stories, their voices echoing back at them in all of the stillness. Then the night shifted. It was subtle at first. The desert went quiet. No crickets, no wind. Even the fire seemed to pop softer, as if sound itself was holding its breath. That's when they heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, crunching at the gravel just beyond the circle of firelight. They fell silent, their smiles fading, eyes darting into the darkness. "Probably just another camper," Miguel whispered, though they all knew better. They hadn't seen another person for miles. Hello? Aaron called, his voice cracking a little bit as it echoed against the canyon walls. Silence. Then a woman's voice. Clear, familiar. "Aaron? Sweetheart?" Aaron's blood went cold. His mouth went dry. That was his mother's voice. Not like his mother, not similar. It was her voice, every cadence, every inflection. The others laughed nervously at first, waiting for him to admit it was a prank. But Aaron's trembling face told them that he wasn't joking. His mother was hundreds of miles away, safe at home. The voice came again, closer this time. "Aaron, come here." He stood up, shaking. "Mom?" Bree grabbed his arm, yanking him back down, her nails dug into his skin. "That's not her." The voice shifted, louder now, angrier. "Aaron, come here!" The fire flared, suddenly, sparks leaping high into the air. For a split second, in the edge of the firelight, they saw it. A figure. Tall, too tall. Its arms were long and thin, dangling low, ending in sharp, crooked fingers. Its skin looked cracked, leathery, hanging loose in place like a suit that didn't fit. Its head tilted unnaturally, jerking side to side as if bones were snapping and resetting every twitch. Its eyes glowed a faint yellow. Then its mouth. Oh God. Its mouth stretched into a grin and looked carved. Teeth jagged and uneven, like shards of bone forced into its gums. Aaron screamed. Tasha dropped her beer, the bottle shattering at her feet. Miguel stumbled back towards the tent, muttering prayers in Spanish. The thing didn't move closer, but the voice carried again. This time, it didn't sound like Aaron's mother. It sounded like Bree's father. "Bree, it's me. Come over here." Bree's face went pale. She clamped her hands over her ears, shaking her head violently. Then it was Miguel's sister's voice, then Tasha's grandmother. One after another, familiar voices, perfect imitations, pouring out of this twisted mouth. The laughter started then. At first low, guttural, then higher, sharper. It wasn't human. It wasn't animal. It was both, and everywhere at once. The four of them bolted. They doused the fire with dirt, grabbing what they could, and diving into their tents, zipping them shut, clinging to each other in the dark. But the voices didn't stop. For hours, the thing circled their camp. Its footsteps crunched slowly around the tents, dragging, scraping. Sometimes it stopped right outside, breathing heavy, almost sniffing. And then it would call out again, each time in a different voice, each time someone they loved. "Aaron, open your tent." "Tasha, let me in." "Bray, don't you love your father?" "Miguel, I'm cold, please." The worst part, the voices started to sound like them. By 3 a.m, Aaron heard his own voice outside of the tent. "Aaron, come out." When dawn finally broke, the voices were gone. The desert was silent again, as if nothing had happened. The four of them backed in terrified silence. No one wanted to be the first to speak, to acknowledge the nightmare they lived through. As Aaron loaded the cooler into his truck, his phone buzzed. No service, just a voicemail, received sometime in the night. He pressed play. It was his mother, her real voice, cheerful, warm. "Hi, honey, just wanted to check in. I miss you. Call me back when you get the chance." The exact words he'd heard whispered in the dark. The four of them never spoke of that night again. They drifted apart after graduation, each quietly battling their own private nightmares. But Aaron never truly escaped. Sometimes, years later, he would wake up in his apartment in the middle of the city, safe, far from the desert. Or so he thought. And he would hear it. A voice. His mother's. Soft, right outside of his window. "Aaron, sweetheart, let me in." Sometimes, when he was brave enough to look, he swore he saw something too tall standing just beyond the glass. And once, just once, he heard his own voice answering from the dark. "Aaron, open the door." The desert has a way of making you feel small. Even in daylight, the messiahs loom like ancient giants, and the red dust clings to your skin, and the silence feels older than time itself. But at night, it feels alive. Elias had been hunting in the desert since he was a teenager. He was Navajo, and though his grandmother had always warned him to never camp alone, he told himself he was too old for those types of stories now. He wanted solitude. He wanted peace. Just him, his rifle, and the stars. That evening he set up a camp in a very small valley between two hills. The fire crackled, its glow bouncing against the jagged rocks. The sky overhead was enormous, a black dome, pierced with thousands of stars. Elias ate, cleaned his rifle, and stretched out to sleep. That's when he heard it. A low thump. At first he thought it was just the wind shifting the tent. Then it came again. Thump, thump, thump. A drum. Slow, steady, carrying through the hills. Elias sat up, heart quickening. The sound was a faint but unmistakable one. He wasn't near any towns. There were no powwows, no ceremonies out here. And yet, the drumming continued. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped outside. The desert stretched, silent and vast, the fire throwing faint light across the dirt. But from the north ridge, beyond the hilltop, the drumming carried, low and deliberate, as if someone were beating a high drum. Thump, thump, thump. He told himself it had to be campers. It has to be campers. But a chill crawled up his spine all the same. Against his better judgment, Elias climbed the ridge. The higher he went, the louder the drumming grew, until it was vibrating through his bones. The rhythm was wrong, not ceremonial, not like any Navajo song he had ever heard. It was offbeat, jagged, almost angry. He crouched low, peering over the ridge, and that's when he saw them. A circle of figures moved in a clearing below. There were at least a dozen of them, all crouched low to the ground, swaying in unison. Some looked human, others didn't. Their limbs bent wrong, heads hung too low. Their movements were jerky, unnatural, as though they weren't used to wearing their own bodies. The fire in the center of the circle cast them a grotesque silhouette. One of them beat the drum, slow, steady, each strike echoing through the valley. Another tossed strange objects into the fire, bones, scraps of fur, and something wet that hissed when it hit the flames. The smell hit Elias's nose a second later. Burnt meat mixed with rot. He gagged silently, his pulse thundering in his ears. Then, one of them stood. It was taller than the rest, impossibly tall. Its skin was pale, sagging, stretched too thin across the frame of jutting bones. It turned its head slowly, jerking like something broken, and then Elias's breath caught, because its face was his own, distorted, stretched, grinning too wide, eyes glowing sickly yellow. Elias stumbled back, a sharp rock stabbing his palm. The sound echoed down the valley like a gunshot. The drumming stopped. The circle went utterly silent, and then every head turned. For a single heartbeat, the desert was still. Then, all at once, the figures rose. Some crawling, some snapping upright, their glowing eyes fixed on the ridge. And they began to laugh. The sound was worse than the drumming. It was high-pitched, layered, overlapping, echoing off the stones. Not human laughter, not animal. Something in between. Elias ran. He scrambled down the ridge, his flashlight beam bouncing wildly across the rocks. Behind him, the laughter grew louder, closer. He heard claws skittering across stone, feet slamming in the dirt, voices calling his name in broken unison. Elias! 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 His lungs burned, his legs screamed, but he didn't dare stop. He reached his camp in a frenzy, dove into his truck, slammed and locked the doors. His hand shook as he jammed the keys into the ignition. Before he could turn them, something hit the truck. The metal groaned, the whole vehicle shaking under the impact. Another strike, harder this time, rocked it sideways. Elias screamed, fumbling for his keys, until the engine roared to life. As the headlights flared on, he saw them. Figures surrounding the truck, faces pressed against the glass, some human, some animal, all wrong. Their mouths stretched wide, whispering in voices that weren't theirs. And then, one leaned close to the driver's side window, his own face, grinning back at him. The window cracked under its palm. Fingers too long, nails digging deep grooves into the glass. Slowly, deliberately, it dragged its hand down, leaving streaks of blood and dirt. Elias floored the gas. The truck lurched forward, plowing through a circle of figures. Something thudded against the roof, claws scraping metal, but he didn't look back. He didn't look back once. He drove until the first light of dawn touched the desert horizon. When he finally stopped hours later, the truck was covered in claw marks. The roof bore deep dents, as if something massive had crawled on top. And on the driver's side window was a handprint. 5 long fingers. Too long. In the center of the palm, scratched deep into the glass, was a spiral. Elias left the desert that morning and never returned. He sold his rifle, sold his truck, and moved as far away from those hills as he could. But sometimes, when the night is very still, he swears that he hears it again. The drumming, low, steady, calling to him. And when it does, Elias lies awake, clutching the old spiral-marked glass he kept as a reminder and prays that whatever wore his face that night never finds its way to his door. Thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. Massive shout out to Derek, Dairy Bear, Bubera, Weber for hopping on this with me. He sent me this audio I don't even know how long ago. We've had this planned for a little bit, and then I completely forgot last time I did this subject. But make sure to go check him out. Make sure to like, comment, and go show his channel some love. Let him know that I sent you. He's amazing. He's such a damn good guy. I think he might be getting a little bit annoyed of me constantly like, hey Derek, hey Derek, Dairy Bear. But yeah, make sure to go show him some love. Make sure to like, comment, and if you're new to this channel and you like what you heard, make sure to subscribe. We've got a lot of content, a lot more coming, including a new, different style story that I've never done before, but I'm going ahead and putting a little warning for this next upload, which is coming Sunday. Just a little warning so then you guys do understand that the next video, the topic is going to be pretty touchy, sensitive in a way. Just so then you guys know that, because of where it has to deal with. So I just want you guys to go ahead and know that. And I wanted to kind of get a pre-warning out there for you guys. And I'll make sure to, at the beginning of that video, I will go through and make sure to put another one at the beginning. So just have that in mind when we go to do Sunday's upload. But with that being said, stay safe, stay scary, and I'll see you in the next one.